Coming up on the DLS Stars podcast, yes, my short vacation is over. I'm back, and we put Sam in the penalty box. So it should be a great show. Right, Sammy? No, let's keep the other 31 going. Sean's here. Luds is here. Tanner is here producing for one day only. It's a rare treat when he is at the controls for us as we get ready for the Vancouver Canucks. Thomas Drance and Patrick Johnston will be our guests today. We got a lot of drama coming out of the Pacific Northwest, so let's talk about it right now here on DLLS. This is the DLLS Stars podcast on not a Monday. It feels like Monday to me. It's my Monday, but then tomorrow's my Friday, just like it's your Friday.
It's every Wednesday around here.
Thursday, September 4th, and we are here live in the podcast studio alongside Craig Ludwig and Sean Shapiro and our producer, Tanner Rotman. I'm Owen Newkirk. Thomas is in. He's in. I was just about to text him and tell him to disconnect. There he is. Our first guest today of the other 31 from Vancouver himself at The Athletic. It's Thomas Drance, or as Sean and I would prefer to introduce him, one of the few ever guests on the CarCast way back in the day.
Let's go. Nice to have a chance to chat with you guys again. I know the Dallas market is obsessed with previewing the Dallas Stars season, right? There's no bigger sporting event that is occupying.
There's nothing that's going on right now, Thomas.
Tonight.
Nothing at all.
Yeah, no one's bemoaning the exile of a certain elite pass rusher, I'm sure. Anyway, I'm excited for tonight. Gonna be an interesting Cowboys season, I think, and I'm even more excited to watch this Dallas Stars team put it all back together in the fall. You know, lots of interesting questions, and man, that team's gonna be so good. So
wait, are the Cowboys playing the Packers tonight?
Not the Packers. They're playing the Eagles.
Well, then why do we care?
We don't, but it's the Cowboys. So, But, you know, it's funny. Thomas gave me a great segue because just like DFW has been just consumed by the Micah Parsons saga, the Vancouver Canucks, like this, had quite the saga of their own this year involving JT Miller and Elias Pettersson. So, Thomas, break it all down for us because we were talking about this throughout our show during the season. It was must-see TV for us. We were talking about it. Not so much the whole thing, because we've lived that. I'm not asking you to relitigate it, but the fallout of it. What did it do to the Canucks organization? Losing Miller, obviously they got Philip Hedl, they got Menino in that, but how did that all, Lutz talks about constantly distractions. That had to be the biggest distraction out there.
Yeah, it wasn't a very fun group last season. They didn't have fun. They weren't fun to cover. It was, and I mean, you can tell when you show up at the rink, whether you've played the game or just been around locker rooms or worked for teams, you can tell when the vibe is off, and the vibe was off around that group from puck drop, like from training camp onward. The sort of watchword that I was using throughout the season was there was like a sneering joylessness that surrounded that group, and I don't know that it's, in fact, I would say it's not on any one player, right? Like I would not point the finger at the departed 100-point center who's now playing for the New York Rangers. I would not point the finger at, Elias Pettersson who remains in Vancouver. Like I just think for whatever reason, there was a group of superstar players that, and not just last season, but throughout a protracted period of time, despite having a lot of talent on this roster, have struggled to partner with one another in a way that was consistent, right? And I mean, Luds will tell you, like, he's played with a million guys that he didn't like, right? Like everyone's played with a million guys they didn't like. Everyone's worked with a million people they haven't liked. The question is not whether or not you're friends, it's whether or not you can find a way to partner with one another, right? And find a way to have success. And for whatever reason, those guys couldn't do it. It spilled over. It impacted the entire team. And, you look at this Canucks lineup now, they get Marcus Pettersson back in that deal, which helps. The Canucks needed an additional defender of his caliber in this lineup, but it blew a hole in their center depth that they haven't filled. Like, they did not fill over the course of the summer. I think they would have loved to sign Dallas Stars forward Matt Duchene, right, if he hadn't signed that extension with Dallas, for example. But they were unable to find an answer down the middle of their forward group. And now you're going into the season with Elias Pettersson, who hasn't dominated an NHL game in 20 months, right, has looked like a shadow of himself. Philip Hedl, who's got a lengthy history of concussions. Aatu Ratu, as sort of the projected third-line center. He's got like 50 games under his belt at the NHL level, finished the season strong last year, but will his foot speed actually play to allow him to be a full-time top 9 center? Like, I don't know. That's still a big question mark for me. And Teddy Bluger, who we know, is best used on the fourth line and sort of exclusively on the fourth line. And he's like the safest bet to do his job at an average level next season. But that, is a replacement level gig for the most part. And he's at that level. So, I mean, I think the biggest fallout of the JT Miller trade is that it's blown a massive hole in this Canucks lineup that they still haven't found a way to fill. And we're 4 weeks and 3 days out from the drop of the puck.
16 days from the first preseason game for the Stars.
Let me cut through this BS here, right? Hey, Thomas, I got 3 pages of notes here, right?
He does. Large font.
Well, there goes the Ratu, the Bluger question. There goes Petey question. Like, Jesus, why do I even come here?
Well, it's a good thing you have 3 pages, because you probably find one in there.
So, listen, and they're right. I actually have shirts made up of distractions, Thomas. I can't stand them. It goes all the way back to my playing days, obviously. The whole Fleury thing in Vegas. I just think it chews at teams from the inside out. So there is a guy that it probably played and could have been a distraction at times in his career. But let's talk. I want to know how you feel Rick Tocchet had to handle that whole situation. Did that have anything to do with it? I doubt it. Him leaving? Or can you kind of, I don't know if you have a chance to ask Toc those kind of things, and like, Toc, which one did you want to shoot first?
Yeah, I mean, I think there was a lot on Toc's plate. And I mean, Toc, that he's a guy who cares a lot. He's really good at building relationships, and he doesn't really suffer fools or nonsense. And he dealt with a lot of it ceaselessly throughout last season. I think it wore on him. I don't think there's any question that it wore on him. And I don't think there's any question that the lack of fun, had an impact, especially, like, think about it from his perspective too, where you're working through all of this. You've got, a star goaltender whose return timeline is up in the air. And, I think that was complicated to manage from a man management perspective, even beyond the injury stuff with Thatcher Demko. Then you had the 2 star centers, right? There was a point during last season where they separated them on the power play. Canucks were a top 10 power play, and they separated JT Miller and Elias Pettersson and had them playing on separate units for like weeks on end, right? Like, the only time the team even seemed joyful was after Miller took that 10-game personal leave, which, Tocchet was unable to ever really get into. And of course, it followed Miller getting benched in the second and third period against the Nashville Predators, a loss at home to the Nashville Predators. Miller is benched. 2 days later, he takes the 10-game absence, which caught the team off guard. I mean, you think about it, it's like, I've got this goalie who has been cleared to return, but he says he's not ready, so I'm dealing with that. I'm dealing with these 2-star players who can't even seem to share the ice on the power play. I can't even show my cards as the Vancouver media are sort of asking me these jackal questions about what's going on. Like, I'm protecting the privacy of my players. I can't even level with anybody. And then he goes to the 4 Nations, right? And then he gets to work with like Cooper and Pete and, Cassidy. And it's the highest level hockey problem solving imaginable. And, he's giving notes to Mitch Marner, and Mitch Marner here's the thing once, and he does it perfectly for the rest of the tournament, right? Connor McDavid, oh yeah, this is open on the back door. You think McDavid forgets that? And then he has to come back and work with a team that, is like half bought in. Don't you think? Like, I think there's a lot that went into Rick Tocchet's decision. I think the uncertainty that the Canucks are dealing with both at like the management suite level, but also with Quinn Hughes' future, and sort of what happened last year. I think that all played a role. I think he wanted to be on the East Coast. I think there were family reasons that went into this as well. But to this day, I still think that sharp distinction, right? That like reminder that he got in the middle of the year about how much fun this can be and how little of it he was having in Vancouver. I have to imagine that loomed large in his thinking when he ultimately turned down, an offer that I know he had a lot of respect for. Like the Canucks were willing to make him one of the highest paid coaches in the league. So it didn't come down to money. They met him, not just halfway, they met him all the way in terms of what he wanted, unlike the Cowboys with Micah Parsons. And he still decided to leave. So I do think that speaks volumes. And I really do think that Four Nations experience, that sort of whiplash experience from the best it can be to be coaching high-level players in hockey and just about as nightmarish as it can be, I think that probably played a big role in sort of shaping his perception in the lead up to those talks.
All right. Drance, my question kind of morphed after your answer here. So I see you talk about all of this drama. You talk about what this team is dealing with. You have a guy who's a head coach, 2 years of head coaching experience for junior age kids, 3 years being in this locker room. So not saying he's part of the problem, but he was part of the solution in helping handle everything. So it's not like you brought an outside voice. Is there a world where if Vancouver hadn't made a decision by June 6th, are we talking about Pete DeBoer coaching the Vancouver Canucks right now?
Oh, wow. Interesting.
Good question, Sean.
That is a good question. I don't think so. I think the Canucks were willing to bend for Rick Tocchet because I think they viewed him as the right guy. But, there's a tell that the finalists for the Canucks coaching job were two guys who've never been NHL head coaches, right? Willie Desjardins was a first-time head coach when he got the job in Vancouver, at least at the NHL level. Same with Travis Green, right? Bruce Boudreau obviously was experienced, but it's not exactly like his star was high, right? It's not like he was beating down offers from other teams when he accepted the job. And by the way, I think the same goes for Rick Tocchet, right? And that's even with the fact that Tocchet and Alvin and Rutherford are very close, dating back to their shared time winning back-to-back cups in Pittsburgh. So, like this organization going out and signing Pete DeBoer, I don't think that it's been 25 years since the Canucks brought in like a star level head coach.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, really, it's not how this organization has typically done business, at least under this ownership group. Right.
So
this
let me
ownership
jump
group
in on there, Thomas. Why do you think they brought Adam Foote in from within the organization as an assistant, as opposed to another within the organization in Manny Malhotra, who's obviously has a very rising star?
Yeah, and of course they made that decision before Malhotra went on to win, the Western semifinals and then the Calder Cup final. So that was an interesting dynamic, especially in a market that obsesses over this team and discusses it ad nauseum the way Canucks fans do, because as Abbotsford continued to succeed, right, the backseat driving of Vancouver's coaching hire only amplified. I think there's a lot of information that we can glean both from the fact that the Canucks were as motivated as they were to keep Rick Tocchet and the fact that they ultimately decided to bring a guy already present in the locker room in to be the head coach of this team. And that's that the management organizationally, they didn't view what happened and transpired in the locker room as being on the coaching staff. Right. And I think the truth is you can hear Boudreau talk about it on TSN. And I know for sure that there were issues that Travis Green was managing during his tenure here. Like, I think there was a sense that this was an ancient fissure between two individuals that had, lasted through multiple coaching regimes, and that ultimately, if anything, Tocchet had done a good job bottling it up as well as he did, right? Getting the team to within 6 points of the playoffs, despite a myriad of injuries and all the off-ice drama and the just lack of joy that surrounded this group. And, I think too, this organization had a sense, and I think there's sort of three main things that went into the Foote hire from a Canucks perspective. One, I think they fundamentally wanted someone who was familiar with what had occurred, in part because they thought that he'd be best equipped to manage, I guess, year one post Miller. 2, I think they wanted a coach that the veterans in this room, and especially Quinn Hughes, who's extension eligible after this season, and that's obviously going to be a big push. That's a preoccupation both locally and organizationally, is retaining Quinn Hughes as the face of this franchise. Someone who he and the other veteran players on this team would be comfortable with, and they certainly have a high regard for Foote himself. And then lastly, Rutherford was in Carolina when Rod Brind'Amour was the assistant coach there, right? He'd hired Kirk Muller, and Rod Brind'Amour was an assistant coach on that staff for a few years. And sort of the summer he left, they hired Bill Peters, and Rod worked 4 more years as an assistant coach before he got a shot as a head coach. And I think in Rutherford's view, he'd maybe waited too long with Brind'Amour to promote him, right? Like, he was the right guy, and on some level Rutherford believed that, but also wasn't certain that he was ready. And I think sometimes we see this, especially with wily veteran hockey executives, right? Where, especially when your back's against the wall and things have gone poorly for you, you sort of lean on experience, right? Lean on people you trust. And I think he saw this as an opportunity to avoid making a mistake that he felt he'd made 12 years ago or 10 years ago in Carolina, where I've got the right high character leader. Whether he's ready or not, he's the right guy. And I don't want him to languish in an assistant's job. I don't want to lose him to Philadelphia. I just want to do and hire the guy I believe in. And I think Foote was the guy he believed in. And so I think those were the 3 factors that ultimately shaped him getting the nod ahead of Malhotra.
All right, we have to get to a quick ad break, but lots more with Thomas Drance about the Canucks in just a moment here on DLLS.
Well, let's talk about Monarch Money. And if you have questions where your money goes, like sometimes I do, because I have 2 children that tend to... you spend a lot of money on kids. And so if you tend to struggle to find out where money goes and everything like that. So finances can be messy and confusing. Monarch Money acts like your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control so you can stop earning and start growing. It's more than your average budgeting app. Monarch Money is a complete financial command center for your accounts, investments, and goals. They don't just manage your money, you start building wealth with 50% off your first year for our listeners. So if you're using Monarch Money, like we have many folks at DLS you can learn about things. You're going out to eat too much, or maybe you're spending too much on delivery or whatever. Those are the type of things that they help you with. So,
or spending way too much on vacation.
Okay, yes, that's another good one, Owen. Get control of your overall finances with Monarch Money. Use code DLLS at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code DLLS.
Thank you, Sean. Let's talk about Game Time for a minute. I just used Game Time in a fantastic way to go see the Red Sox at Fenway Park. I got to see Paul Skeens pitch. I got to see the Major League debut of Peyton Tolley, who was fantastic. A couple of big 6'5", 6'6" hurlers with gigantic mustaches. It was a lot of fun. We got a good deal out of it, too. But it's also college football season, so forget what I just said and use Game Time to get your favorite college football tickets, and you can do so knowing that they're guaranteed. Sometimes you can get great deals as low as $25. And of course, you can even get zone deals where you choose a section and save more money because you let Game Time choose your seats. Or you could just say, hey, I'm going to use the seat views and know exactly what I'm doing. Take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code DLLS for $20 off your first purchase. It worked for me. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code DLLS for $20 off. Tap, ticket, go. Download the Game Time app today. All right, let's bring Thomas back in as we continue our conversation about the Vancouver Canucks. And we have way more topics than time, but Luds, keep us going.
Well, I guess, Thomas, for me, when you say that, Adam's been there for a while. Talk was obviously the guy in charge. I think they're both kind of cut from the same cloth when you look at the way that they both approach the game. So is there really a different voice there? You know what I mean? Or is Adam going to kind of be preaching and following up on the same kind of things? Because sometimes you're just changing those kind of guys, so the players can hear something a little bit different. But they've already been listening to him for the most part, right, for 2-3 years now.
Yeah.
So what does Adam bring then that maybe is different than Talk?
Yeah, and look, this is a big swing, right? Adam Foote, as Sean alluded to, lacks head coaching experience, and we all know this is not a rookie league, right? You don't. I mean, going from being good cop assistant coach to being the guy setting the tone every day as the head coach it's a big step, and it's a big step especially when you're working with the same group of players, without question. I am curious, or I was curious to sort of see, like, would Foote rely on some of the structural things and systems, for example, that Tocchet utilized in Vancouver. And the indication that I've got, because Foote's been in town for meetings this week with senior Canucks management and his coaching staff, to sort of talk through and work through the vision for how they want this team to look and feel next season. I think there's going to be significant changes. Like, for what it's worth, despite being a first-year head coach, and despite the fact that, while the Canucks didn't have success last season, structurally they were still formidable, right? I mean, they were down a ton of bodies by the end of the year. Quinn Hughes had the oblique injury, an additional groin injury. I mean, he was a shadow of himself. Pedersen was out of the lineup. Hedl was out of the lineup. They had Pius Suter playing top line center and Atu Ratu playing second line center. I mean, it got ugly. It got grim. And night in, night out, the Canucks were like not getting outshot that badly, or if they lost, they'd lose by 1 goal, right? I mean, there were things you could hang your hat on schematically in terms of how this team was playing. And I was curious to see whether or not Tocchet, or Tocchet's system, as it were, would be maintained by Foote. Like, if he'd do sort of the cover band version of Rick Tocchet hockey. And the indication that I've got is no. I think he's prepared to swing the bat here. I think he's looking at this team and he sees a more mobile, more potentially dynamic blue line group with some promising young bodies. And I think we're going to see more down ice pressure. Like, I think we're going to see a 1-2-2 in the neutral zone. I don't think we're going to see, Tocchet's pressure 2-3 with the neutral zone wedge, and the team just trying to herd bodies into the wall along the defensive blue, where you've got Tyler Myers and all the big Canucks defenders that this team used to rely on, sort of meeting forwards at that point. And you're going to see the aggression ramp up in the defensive zone. Like, I'm not going to be stunned if this team abandons sort of that hybrid man zone system that Tocchet uses, kind of that halfway point between DeBoer and Bruce Cassidy, and goes as aggressive as like full swarm. Like, I think Foote's prepared systematically and in terms of how this team is going to look and feel to swing the bat and depart from sort of some of the systematic choices that Tocchet made. And the leadership side of it, the communication style side of it, I mean, I think there's going to be some similarities, some overlap there. I think with both guys, I think you're looking at coaches that are somewhat old school, obviously, in terms of how they played and what they value, but are kind of new school in terms of how they communicate with players, how actively they communicate with players. And that's sort of the secret sauce, right? You want to get that old school values, new school methods kind of sweet spot. That's kind of what the best version, I think, of Adam Foote looks like in Vancouver. But already I think you're seeing him put some thought into how he's going to depart from sort of Tocchet's shadow in terms of how the team is going to play. Now how the team feels day to day to be in the locker room, I won't have 100% sort of view of that. That's going to be outside of everything that I can glimpse. I'll sort of get hints of it along the way as we go through this season. But I already think I already think Adam Foote's been thoughtful about making sure that he's doing different stuff and really swinging at this one, swinging at this pitch, as opposed to just sticking with the same old.
Drance, if I had told you 18 months ago that Thatcher Demko would...
What if I told you?
Yeah. If I told you 18 months ago that Thatcher Demko wouldn't be invited to the Olympic orientation camp, I would have not believed I would have been saying it myself. And lo and behold, 2 weeks ago, it's a name like Joey Decord's name is popping up now instead of on there. Obviously, his injury issues and struggles have been a much talked about public thing amongst the many things. For you, what's kind of the reality and how do you kind of look for him? Obviously, there's a lot to prove for him from both a health and a play perspective coming back into this season.
Yeah, he definitely has a lot to prove. His stock is at a low ebb. You know, Joey Daccord went and played at the Worlds for Team USA. So you wonder how much Team USA brass wanted to make sure to reward a guy who'd sacrificed his summer, right, to go help the national team program. You also wonder, you know, sometimes, and we see this all the time in hockey, but sometimes you just want, especially if you're talking about like a fourth goaltender, you want just a guy who's going to fill in or fit into his role, right? As opposed to someone pushing and driving in August to make the case that they should be starting ahead of, you know, whomever, right? And so I sort of wonder if those two factors loomed large in the thinking of Team USA brass with that. You know, I don't think Demko should take it as an insult by any means. I think it's probably good for him to just be focused on rehabbing and having a fully healthy summer and training because of everything that's on the line for him, as opposed to going to an orientation camp 2 weeks out from the start of training camp. I think that's probably a good thing. And let's be real. If Thatcher Demko gets to January or December, whenever these teams are being named, and he's chugging along at a .930 save percentage and he's fully healthy and dialed in and looking like one of the most dominant puck stoppers in the sport, Team USA is going to bring it. Right? Like this is, the door's not closed on this for him by any means. Demko's situation, it's a fascinating one. He dealt with an unprecedented knee tear last season. Then he got back, sustained a back injury, got back, groin injury, then missed the last few games with illness. I mean, it was a nightmare campaign for him health-wise on the tail end of a season in which he got hurt down the stretch, worked to get back for the playoffs, and then left game one with an injury, and we never saw him again. I mean, it's been a rough 18-month run for Thatcher Demko health-wise. And to, you know, add to it, I'd say when he was in the net, although we saw flashes of the dominant, athletic, positionally excellent goaltender that he can be, he wasn't at his best last season either. Now, the Canucks have already signed him, right? Which does, to some extent, limit at least the financial stakes of this season for Demko, right? He signed a 3-year deal with an $8 million cap hit the very first day that he was eligible, which speaks to the level of confidence that the Canucks have that he can be a goaltender of the caliber capable of carrying this team to the postseason right now and going forward. But yeah, I mean, I think in terms of, you know, rebuilding the trust that you know, Canucks fans watch him play these days and are just sort of nervous the whole time that at some point he's going to get up slowly after a save, right? So a healthy season would help put that to rest. In terms of his stock around the league, as evidenced by him not being invited to Team USA camp, I mean, we're only 2 years removed from this guy being considered one of the best goaltenders in hockey. A lights out season would restore that level of stock in terms of how he's viewed. And then obviously the Canucks have swung big, both on him and Kevin Lankinen, who they also signed 5 years, 4.5. So beyond this season, they're going to have 12.5 million wrapped up in net. You know, the thing about the Demko contract that I still sort of look askew at, because I think he's enormously talented and can obviously exceed the value of that cap hit in terms of his hockey contributions. But, you know, I look around and all the other goaltenders making in and around 8.5, 8.25 million or more are guys that play 60 games a year, right? They're Hellebuck and Vasilevsky and, you know, the best of the best, Shesterkin, Sorokin, on and on. And, you know, even the guys who haven't done that historically, like Swayman and Ullmark, but are paid in that range, they're paid in that range to be 60 game a year guys. They just didn't do it when they were a lights out tandem together with the Boston Bruins. But the Canucks are, and the Lankinen deal really speaks to this, making a different type of bet on Demko. They intend to play him 50 games, right? They don't want him to be a workhorse starter. And, you know, I think it would be irresponsible for them to use him in that way. So to some extent anyway, they've placed a different bet than other teams have placed on their star goaltenders, right? Those goaltenders, they're being counted on to be workhorses. The Canucks are paying Demko like a workhorse without counting on him to be utilized in that manner. And I struggle to square that just as, you know, an egghead analyst, just in that it feels to me like a bet against themselves, even though obviously the real bet is that Demko is the sort of guy that can steal him a playoff series if they get there.
All right, Thomas, we're almost out of time. The analysis has been fantastic, as we would expect from you. But I do have to ask you one thing before we get to Patrick, and that is about the Dallas Stars. So this whole series in the summer, we've asked every guest what your perspective is on the Stars going into the 25-26 season.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think they're a contender. I think they're one of the best teams in hockey. I'm going to be very, very excited to watch what Mikko Rantanen can do with a full 82-game ramp-up in Dallas. You know, I'm still extraordinarily high on Wyatt Johnston. I know it wasn't his best season, but I think this is a star-level player. I love Thomas Harley. I actually don't think Thomas Harley is just a, like, perfect complement to Miro Heiskanen. I think he's a star defender in his own right. So, I mean, I look at this Dallas team and I think they're as complete as anybody you'll see around the league. I think expectations should be that they're, you know, that they're going to be pushing and perhaps pushing realistically to get over the hump and win the Stanley Cup. And, you know, if I have any doubts about that, it's that I'm a guy who's very high on Pete DeBoer. I think Pete DeBoer is an exceptional hockey coach. Glenn Gulletson obviously has tenure in Vancouver as an assistant. You know, he's done it before in Dallas, and I think he's a good coach, but I think he's got big shoes to fill. And then, of course, the Jason Robertson, will they or won't they, that also lingers above the Stars. And, you know, for me anyway, Jason Robertson, all his playoff performances have been a bit mixed. I have no question. There's no question in my mind that he's one of this league's elite goal scorers. I love the area game. You know, I do think you need to play a certain way for him to have maximum success, but I don't think that's different from how Rantanen needs to play, right? Like the difference, I guess, is that Rantanen can just sort of call game himself, skating the puck through the neutral zone and then picking a corner the way no one else on the planet can. But, you know, both guys, I think, are at their best playing sort of a slower east-west puck possession style, as opposed to doing some of the north-south stuff, the stress hockey that's so in vogue and that the Florida Panthers rely on, for example. So, you know, I think there's no question in my mind anyway that Robertson can fit, that he can be a big game player and a big game point producer, even though that's been lacking in years past. So I look at this Stars team and think, man, sky's the limit. This is clearly, in my mind, the best team in the Central Division, and clearly one of the 4 or 5 teams that we should go into this season expecting to be hoisting the Stanley Cup, or at least competing for it at the end of this season.
Thomas, unfortunately, we're out of time, but your energy is infectious. Your analysis is great. We love having you. Thank you so much for carving out a few minutes for us today.
I need a cigarette.
And we'll talk to you again soon. Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Thomas.
Thanks. Cheers.
Thomas Drance from The Athletic. If you're not reading his stuff, you have to. It's fantastic. Up next, let's talk to Patrick Johnston. More Canucks talk here on the Stars' Other 31 on DLLS.
First, we're going to talk about the football team and our team that covers the football team that is playing tonight. If you may not have heard that there happens to be a big football game, and maybe you should look into booking this trip before seeing what the Eagles do to the Cowboys tonight, since you're still excited about going to watch the Cowboys go play the Raiders, to do my best Sam Nestler impression.
That wasn't passionate, Sean. You didn't go for it.
I do not have the passion for.
You got to channel your inner Chris Berman. That's the Raiders.
There's just a lack of passion or caring about what happens to the Cowboys season. Just honestly,
he is dead inside, Luds. His soul has been crushed.
He's not talking about the Packers, though.
That's right. He's talking about the Cowboys.
Exactly. That's my point.
But it's going to be a really fun trip there for the DLS and Cowboys fans that do go. Our Cowboys team is going to be there. It's great. Obviously, everyone will always talk about the front of camera talent, but I can't help but point out John Anderson's going. So why wouldn't you go on that trip to be in the same place as John Anderson and have a great time? And most importantly, if you go and have a good time and this is a smashing success, it may help this Dallas Stars show at some point. So I am.
Hey, Sean, Harry just said in the chat, they healthy scratch Sam for Sean's lack of emotion on the ad read ?
Yes, that is the.
I'm just trying to help you get through the rest of the ad read.
Yeah. But go on the trip, have a great time. Vegas is fun no matter what. And who knows, maybe there's something for us in the future.
Don't forget, get your shirts.
Oh, the t-shirt. The t-shirts. Yes. With become a diehard member, we have incredible t-shirts. We've got some that are about to pop up on the screen. We got some from some Cowboys ones that you can definitely wear once you get them to watch on that trip. And I'm also a big fan of a lot of the Dallas Stars ones. I don't know if those can pop up too, because I think there's there we go. The Jake Ottinger one.
Oh, Tanner's quick on the button. Don't test him. He'll beat you.
Finnish Mafia one. We got some fun Stars ones, because you should rock the shirt of a team that might actually win more than 6 games this season.
Man. And Ardell, before we get to Patrick, Ardell said in the chat, Sean's eyes look like low tide death when he said Cowboys. That's amazing. It's true. I feel for you, buddy, because suddenly my Patriots look a little less terrible. So just saying. Anyway, let's get to Patrick. Patrick Johnston is the columnist for the Province and the Vancouver Sun, and
Does everybody
much
shave their heads in Vancouver?
I'll tell you what.
Yes, we all lost our hair.
Patrick is absolutely loving, maybe even relishing Sean's demure attitude, his downright morose feeling of shame for what he currently calls being a Cowboys fan. Hi, Patrick.
Well, I guess I want to ask you guys, my 14-team PPR league, Dak went for $4 last night. So I don't know what the reaction is out there for you guys. But the fact that you got drafted all, is that a good sign? Or I don't know what that is.
He's still a starter. That still has some value. So speaking of which, let's try to segue this into the Canucks.
Oh, he's overpaid.
Yeah, probably.
Is that where you're going?
Too much? Okay.
I don't know where you're going, but I'm guessing where you're going.
Okay, I don't even know if I know where I'm going.
Oh, well, that's good then.
We were just talking to Thomas.
Easy. Guys, there's nothing left to say after Tom. Tom told you everything.
He did.
He's unmatchable. I sit next to him every game at the press box. Unmatchable.
I mean, the energy on Thomas is unbelievable, is it not? I love it.
Craig was right. You need to smoke after talking to him every time.
Oh, he's so good. So let's talk about playoff history, because once in the last 5 years, 2 in the last 10 seasons for the Canucks. How is that eating away at the fan base right now?
Oh, like you wouldn't believe. Like you absolutely wouldn't believe. I mean, honestly, I'm old enough. I sit and look at Craig and I think about 94, and there is just that energy for Canucks fans that they want to recapture. 94, 2011, if you're old enough, you go back to 82. Like, people remember how good it can be. And 2024 was super fun, even if they only made 2 rounds in the playoffs. And, it's funny, 5 years ago, obviously the bubble, and there was that whole story. The Canucks were an interesting team in a weird situation. There's been these tantalizing moments, and then last year was just this absolute unbelievable disaster. And everyone doesn't want that again. They want 2 years ago at the very least, they want that back.
Well, sometimes playoff success, getting to the playoffs to start with, have to do with, what do you put it on, your best players usually? So, I mean, I think your best players need to be the best players, right? So let's talk about EP40 a little bit. Here, Patrick, here's what I want to know. Is he as blank off the ice as he is on the ice? Or is that just a competitive thing in him? Or is his demeanor different away from the rink than what it appears to be game time?
There is no doubt there is a passion and energy that burns deep inside of him, but he is a different cat. And so when things aren't going well, that really shows that the way he sort of responds to others may not cast him in a good light. And I know that's been frustrating for teammates in the past. Certainly, I don't think there's any denial. You talk to Rick talking about him all the time last year, and he said, this kid cares. He wants to win. I think the biggest challenge for him last season was he had never gone through a funk in terms of results like he had in, beginning after basically the All-Star game in 2024. He'd never gone through a funk like that before, and he did not know how to deal with it. And I think that was a big mental challenge for him, was trying to get through that. And I think that is, to me, the big question is, has he figured that out? And is he recognized that people are trying to come to him to help, to guide him to where he needs to go? Because no, you're right, Craig, like the way he presents himself a lot of the time and what you see on the ice is very neutral, right? And I can understand how opponents or teammates or whatever are going to be put off by that. Like, what does this guy care? He does care. He hated how badly last year went. We know that much. But I think for him, it's an internal thing, right? He's like, that's my thing. That's my problem. Why am I going to spill all that to everybody else? And that's just how he handles it. But in the end, how he plays is the reaction. And if he comes out flying, and I watched him skate around yesterday. Obviously, it's the first skate of the year with his some of his teammates. If he flies around like he did 2, 3, 4 seasons ago, then we won't even be talking about this. It's all about, in the end, for him, it's all about what he does. And less about what he reacts. And if he's not doing anything, of course, we're going to talk about how he's reacting.
Are there conversations about him getting more pucks to the net? I mean, he's got like 150 fewer shots over the last 2 seasons, right? And I think he's under a couple shots per game. It seems like when he's not scoring, he's afraid to not score. And it's like, I don't want to shoot because the puck's not going to go on the net, which I kind of think that's the wrong way you go about it.
I think you're absolutely onto something there. Like you're right. First of all, the shot volume, shot rate, however you want to count it, collapsed last year. And this was a guy that, he won the slap shot at the skills competition, right? Like, this is a guy that can hammer the puck. And for much of the first half of the season, it's great. We've got the puck tracking technology, right? We can see how slow his shot was. He was not hit anything hard, and he wasn't skating hard either. And the way the Canucks struggled through so much of the first half, obviously we know the off-ice dynamic that was in play. But fundamentally, this was a team that was designed to have Pettersson attacking the middle and Miller attacking the middle, and neither of them did it. And then in the end, they were all stuck. And I think, Craig, you had to think about how to stop star players all the time. And I think what's happened here partly is that not only was there perhaps a sort of a physical aspect to this, but it was also a scouting aspect that teams figured out how to defend him, and he had no answers, and he couldn't create any separation. He couldn't find any space for himself. And so he wasn't shooting enough. And as the season, as we got to the conclusion, he obviously got hurt at the end, but there was a little window in there where you're like, okay, I think he's taking it to the shooting areas again. But again, that's another big question that comes back to what you asked me before, about the sort of emotional reaction. Fundamentally, it comes down to what he is doing on the ice. And if he is getting to the hard areas and he's getting shots off, he is going to score because his shot is that good. But if he's not getting there, he ain't scoring.
Patrick, kind of related to that, one of the things I was always thinking about, like, with what is own individual play, no one can say anything bad of Quinn Hughes a couple years. But when you're the guy who wears the letter as the captain, and I think he was 23 when he was given that title, and everything like that. For him, have you seen the growth necessary, and B, kind of where does it kind of fall on Quinn to kind of help? We talk a lot about we got this locker room's going to get a new coach.
Yeah.
Where does this fall on Quinn to kind of be I guess the standard bearer, or whatever you want to call it, to help get everything into one place there?
Well, yeah, this is really the first time he's ever been that kind of guy, too. Like, in his entire playing career from when he was a kid all the way up. Like, he'd never been the guy who had to handle all the extra stuff that comes with the C. It was a difficult year when you're not winning, and then on top of all the other stuff that was going on between teammates, trying to, I guess, play peacemaker is the best way to put it. The dynamic was so far beyond what he just was trying to do on the ice. Because what he does on the ice is the most important part of his leadership talents, right? Like, he's the guy that gets it done. He's the guy that makes it happen. I talk all the time about how in hockey we love identifying players based on where they start their shift as opposed to what they actually do. You think about the way we describe players even in basketball or in soccer. Like, Quinn Hughes is a defenseman, but he's not. He's something different. And he's a point guard driving lane, and he will carry the puck around and around, and he's trying to find the gaps, and he's trying to create space for his teammates. And that in its own was his, I think, the best case for why he's the captain. And the emotional aspect, he is a guy, he is very much the modern player, where it's not too high, not too low, trying not to comment too much on what happened, trying to avoid his emotional reactions. But he's a guy that cares, and we know that. The question now is, okay, in theory, the room is stabilized. It's not going to have the problems it did last year. Certainly if Pettersson doesn't play well, there's going to be internal frustration with him, but that's not going to be a 1v1 kind of thing the way it was last year. I do think Quinn Hughes has that. He has the room, right? Like, these guys believe in him. They respect him. They see the work ethic. They see the delivery. He's not a rah-rah. I mean, I think most leaders actually these days aren't rah-rah types. He's not a rah-rah type, but he's a guy that focuses. He shows up. He was sort of challenged a little bit by management 3 years ago. Their first half season in charge. At the end of the season, Patrick Allvin, the GM, basically said, we need to see people understand that the standard they've set is not, first of all, good enough because they haven't made the playoffs. But even when they do make the playoffs, you have to keep progressing. And that was a big talking point going into last season was, they won the division. They pushed the Oilers in the second round. They were that close to being the next thing, and that now teams are going to be pursuing you, and you guys have to be mentally ready for that. And that was a failure of the team. And so I think in a certain level, Quinn, from what I know of Quinn, he will take that on and say, well, we need to fix that, and we need to think differently. We need to think more sort of, not ambitiously, but more intently in what we want to do. What's our intention here? How are we going to do it? And he will do that by leading by example. I mean, he obviously knows there's going to be a lot of chatter. I mean, he talked about it with Sportsnet the other day about how he knows that there's going to be lots of noise because of his contract situation, because that, what Jim Rutherford acknowledged at the end of last season, that maybe he wants to play with his brothers, and knowing what that might mean, he knows that's going to come for him. And I think he's ready to deal with it. I think he is just that player. He is just a supernatural talent. You guys have seen lots of those in Dallas. He is that type of player. Like, he just does so much more than the next guy. And he's going to keep doing that.
All right, lots more with Patrick in just a moment because I want to follow up on that right here on DLLS. But first, let's talk about a couple of different things. Before I get you to the diehard stuff, Sean was ready for that QR code. We're not quite there yet because I have to talk to you about Big Brother, Big Sister. We are doing a big month here, Big Brother, Big Sister. Yeah, look at Ludz's shirt. He's pointing it out. If you're not looking, you did notice that he's prepared for this. There is a huge initiative for ALLCITY, not just DLLS, but DNVR, the ones in Phoenix and Chicago, and of course in Philadelphia, to try to raise money for a fantastic cause. And if you notice on the YouTube page right now that you're watching it on, because we're live, if you're watching this later, of course, you can't do it live, but instead of the super chat button, there is a donate now. If you do hit that donate now, let us know that you've done it in the chat, and we'll still do a super chat. Maybe we'll even have Tanner play a drop or two of your request. But those donations will be sent directly to Big Brothers Big Sister. So it will be a massive cause for them. We're doing it all month. There'll be some other shows where we aren't doing the other 31 where maybe we can get a little bit more involved with it. But that doesn't mean that those donations aren't super important. And plus, we've got some preseason games coming up sooner than we realize. We'll do pre and post game shows and
how many vacation days?
Super chats. And yeah, let's just really start to use that PTO. But let's talk about being a diehard for a second, because you absolutely want to get full access to everything that we have here at DLLS. And right now, whether you like it or not, the Cowboy season starts tonight, and you can sign up to be a diehard if you've never done it before for just $36 for your first year. And as Tanner showed in our last break, you will get a free football club t-shirt if you sign up. There are 3 different options to choose from, all Cowboys related. As you can see, the big horseback riding cowboy, the Dem Boys, or the 88 Club. I remember yesterday's show as I was watching this morning, Sam goes, I can't see what's on I don't know if he didn't have his glasses on or what. He literally couldn't see that there was a cowboy riding a horse.
He didn't have his chair all the way elevated.
I love it. AllDLS.com. Become a diehard today and get everything that we have to offer, plus one of those football club shirts. All right, let's bring Patrick back on. Let's bring Sean back on. Let's talk about Quinn Hughes for a minute more. You mentioned it, Patrick, and you set me up perfectly that this was not from Quinn Hughes. This was from Jim Rutherford. And Luds and I were talking about this pre-show today.
I was wondering if Jimmy was sitting at Dicks on Dicks over there when he made that comment.
And we're sitting there going, like, is it realistic? Because we've heard all the rumors, but you're in market. Is this a realistic concern that fans in Vancouver have that they could lose their captain after his contract's done in 2 years, or somehow before that if Vancouver suddenly realizes that they think they could lose him for nothing.
It's a great one. First of all, Lutz, I'm sorry to report Dicks on Dicks closed a few years ago. So
I know, but I didn't want to bring up orange number 5. I didn't think that would be appropriate.
It's still there.
Google that. That's closed too, isn't it? Anyway, that thing's still going strong.
It's still there.
Is it still there?
Jimmy Rutherford. It's an entertaining place. Let's put it that way.
Is it still open?
Yeah, it's still going.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I've just changed. I'm going to Ben, and I'm saying instead of taking a trip to Vegas, I think we need to take a trip to Vancouver.
Why not both?
I can be your tour guide.
I've only been to Vancouver only time,
one is going to come back from that trip.
And it's gorgeous. And then we bust to Abbotsford for an Abbotsford Heat game.
Never played a game in the minors. We're not going there.
It wasn't even a Canucks game. It was a Heat game.
Yeah, look at even Patrick.
I know.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, let's talk about Quinn.
Yeah, well, Jimmy Rutherford, I mean, listen, he's been very honest and clear with us when he's been asked about stuff. As I said, he brought it up. Yeah, I mean, listen, I think it's going to be a topic. It's inevitable when the team is struggling, right? Like, and I saw, I think it was Ardell in the comments, media scrutiny must be exhausted. I mean, listen, I think we are aware. This is the big show in town. This is the only big league team in town. We have a CFL team, which has some love. We have an MLS team, which has some love, but fundamentally in the end, hockey is what rules the day here. So
a pretty good MLS team too, I might add right now.
Yeah. Fantastic and a huge signing. And anyway, but like in the end, the Canucks still dominate the conversation, and they're the casual fan that's still interested, even as they've been struggling over the past decade. Like, this is what people still focus on. This is what people want to see. And so, yeah, inevitably when things are bad, every little thing gets dialed in on, and whether it's from us or it's just fans in general. And the fact that, you look at the struggles that this team mostly has had while Hughes has been here, what are his sort of personal desires, personal interests? Obviously, winning a Stanley Cup is a huge factor, but sometimes you get extra things. And Rutherford wasn't wrong to acknowledge that his two brothers play for a different team. And now they're all at the pinnacle of the sport. And Quinn is potentially, 2 years from now, facing a position where he could choose himself to leave. And that is inevitably going to be a huge talking point. And you would not be silly to think that part of the reason why Rick Tocchet sat back and said, what am I going to do here, was considering what was his team going to look like even a year from now. That was a cold hard truth. And, he went to a team, obviously, that's got lots of other question marks, but I don't think there's a question mark about Matvei Michkov leaving in 2 years, like that's the difference. And it's a long way to go, but in many ways, I think, it's similar to what we heard Pettersson a few years ago. There was, when he was coming off one of his great seasons, he'd been playing well. And he basically said, coming out of sort of the Jim Benning era, I want to play for a winning team. That's what matters. And it was a little bit of not a shot out of the bow, but him saying, listen, I care. I'm not going to just show up no matter what happens. Quinn Hughes is the same way. And if this team obviously things start going south, like there is going to be a huge amount of noise about it, because it's not just going to be us. Like, this is the other thing. And by the way, I mean, this was the thing about last season with the Rift. So much of the conversation actually was driven from like outside, like national level media, other podcasts, not you guys, to be clear, but there were other podcasts out there that were driving a lot of this bus. And, I would talk to some of the players sort of behind, how you guys, are we doing? They're like, how's this going? No. It's a lot of noise from elsewhere. I understand what you guys are having to deal with. And, we were doing our best to be fair and accurate in what we understood, but a lot of it was just, the gas, how it goes. And that's always been the case. It just shapes in a different way now, right? But like, the national conversation is going to descend on Quinn Hughes no matter what. Will he or won't he? Because that's just the nature of the beast. Like, look what we're doing right now. You guys want to know about the Vancouver Canucks, and you're a Dallas podcast. So it is inevitable that it's going to come up, whether they're winning or not. It's going to be, is this enough to keep him? And I guess we're just going to have to see how that all shakes out over the next 18 months, however long it's going to be. When's the next trade deadline? When's the trade deadline after that? Those are the two big pressure points at this point, I think.
Well, Patrick, there is another. Normally, there's three of us up here, but whenever Sean decides to bless us with an appearance, that third one gets booted to the curb. And this is in honor of Sam Nessler.
Oh, you're going to ask about college hockey?
I'm going to ask a college question for Sam.
Okay, let it go for
you know what? You know what reminded me of this is I heard Patrick say, I think he said elite team.
Mm-hmm.
Did you? Okay, well, I want to speak of the elite program, the University of North Dakota.
Oh, here we go.
Okay,
well,
so
there we
we're
go.
talking elite. So what happened with Brock Besser? Like, how did things change? Was he playing possum? Was it posturing when I'm going to move on? Then all of a sudden, bang, he signs a big deal.
I think honestly, like talking to I talked to his agent, like Ben Hankinson he thought it was over, right? Like the way things had progressed, the way I think management was presenting itself, and certainly the way they talked to us, that they thought they could find a different kind of player. Brock Besser is a very good goal scorer, consistent. Like he shows up. He is not a leading top goal scorer in this league. I don't think anybody expects that. He's a better two-way player than people give him credit for. He is a handy, useful. He's a positive teammate. He's a good guy to have in your room. He wants to be here, which it used to be a big thing, but that's not a big thing. But that's kind of a big thing given how things have been. He is a good guy to have around. But for whatever reason, management found themselves looking elsewhere. And I think fundamentally what happened was they got up to the window and they saw all these guys re-signing with teams. They had talked a lot about wanting to bring in at least one, maybe two top six forwards. And that market kind of evaporated before it even opened. And in the end, they did what I think a lot of us thought would happen, which was that in the end, they did make one final call saying, okay, we know what you're after. We know what will probably keep you here. Can we do that? And that's where they are. And he's going to be here. And I think fans are happy. I think he's happy. His teammates are certainly happy. Because the truth is, look at what they did in free agency. They signed P.O. Joseph. Like, that's it. They didn't do anything. This has been a team that has been quite active, no matter who the managers have been, going back 15 years, going back 20 years to Brian Burke. Like, this is a team that consistently signed players in free agency. This year has not really gone that way, and partly because there wasn't a lot out there. And they just had to sit back and think, we cannot go into this season without a guy that we at least know is a reliable goal scorer. So he's come back. I think the team's happy. It is to their benefit. But you're right. It was a bizarre sequence because certainly at the deadline, we asked Patrick Allvin about this, and there were certainly things on the table. There had been conversations going on about moving to other teams, Carolina at one point, that there were other teams interested. But at the end of the day, they held on to the player, and they thought they at that point weren't that confident. They still talked a big game that, oh yeah, he's still an option. Yeah, no. But at that point, they didn't want to sign him, I don't think, for what they ended up signing him for, but they didn't really have any other options. And he's a good player. He's a guy that will help them win. He's not a superstar. And I think fundamentally that was the other truth, is that they wanted to find a superstar, but there just weren't any more out there.
All right, Patrick, I got one kind of off the cuff one, but I've been wanting to, when we do this Vancouver show, I kind of wrote someone to ask somebody with Vancouver expertise.
Sure.
Every year, because it's always fun when trade deadlines happen. People always talk about teams trading with teams and everything like that.
Yeah.
We all know the public squabble, whatever word we want to use, between the owners of these two organizations.
Yes.
We know the history. In fact, I believe courts in Canada had to get involved at some point.
Yes.
If there was, do you believe that there is a fundamental divide that would ever stop these teams from making a hockey move because of the men at the top? Do you think that is something that would happen? Because it's something that I always think about whenever we. I know Stars fans who have looked this past history up always ask me about it. So I'm curious from the Vancouver perspective of this. Would the billionaire gentlemen get involved in not making a deal to help each other?
I would not say it's impossible. I mean, let me think about it. Is Derek Roy the last trade?
I believe so. I think that was
as
the
soon as you,
Can't think
as soon
of
as
one
you brought it up,
since.
I'm like, I don't spend a lot of time thinking about this. I mean, certainly we know well that the Gallardis, well, certainly the Gallardi son, or Tom and Francesco are not terribly close.
Yes.
As I understand it, the fathers, the old men, are still in touch with each other, and in fact, they were, at least until recently, partnered on a ski development project. But anyway. I can confirm there remains some personal animosity. So could that I mean, could that interfere into hockey ops? I don't think so, to be perfectly honest. I mean, let's see. One of the first questions that I asked Jim Rutherford was dealing with an owner, and he said, "Listen, I have long experience in managing up and dealing. Your part of your job is being responsible. But if there was a trade on the table that involved, I mean, certainly there were talks at some point about Pius Suter going into the deadline. Didn't happen, but I do not believe that got blocked because of ownership animosity or anything like that. I think fundamentally it's just there hasn't been a lot of fits. I think that's the story. Partly because the Stars have been so good, and so what they're constantly for is sort of parts. I think the Canucks. I mean, the other thing to remember is the Canucks keep trying to go for it, right? Like this owner is like constantly, he's pushing, let's make the playoffs. So the Canucks have been reluctant sellers, even in seasons where they haven't played well. And especially under Jim Benning, that was the case. So yeah, like they have not necessarily always been in a position to send the kind of sort of reinforcement player, I guess, that the Stars would have been looking for. And certainly, I mean, in terms of results, they would have been, but in terms of mentality, they'd rarely been. So, no, I don't think that's the case. But now you actually have me wondering, and I'm going to start poking around.
Oh, I can't wait to find this out.
My personal fact checker, Robert Tiffin, just texted me mid-show here. He said, I forgot, and he's shaming me for forgetting about the Jason Dickinson expansion draft trade.
Oh, yes, of course.
So technically, we all forgot about the big Jason Dickinson expansion draft trade. So technically, there has been something since Derek Roy, but that's...
Jason Dickinson, what an experience that man had here, I guess.
All right. We're not done yet. We're almost done. We have to go to a quick overtime. So thank you to our viewers on our television platforms. Make sure to like and subscribe. Check out alldlls.com. Okay. Patrick, one final question because we are out of time. But here we are, and it's the Stars going into the 25-26 season. I asked every one of our summer series about this, and you will be no exception in that manner. What do you think, truthfully, not that you would, Barry said
blow smoke?
That's right. I believe you would cut through said smoke and give us an honest answer, of course. But what do you think of the Stars going into this year?
I'm similar to what Thomas was talking about. This is a team always loved the depth. I was a huge Pete DeBoer guy. I'm sort of fascinated by his story more and more as we've watched how it didn't quite work to get to the final step. I'm curious to see how Glenn Gulutzan does, I suppose, obviously coming back to where he's been before. Certainly, I've talked to him a ton over the years. I wasn't really covering the team when he was here as an assistant, but, a guy that has I think a well-earned reputation, certainly has seen a lot, been a lot, learned a lot, between, essentially, I would say, probably here, Calgary, and Edmonton, right? Like all three stories have been had quite the twists to them. But what has he gained? What has he learned about himself? What is he going to do differently this time around in Dallas? And will that be the secret sauce? I think that's the thing that's most fascinating, because God knows there's enough talent here. Almost every one of those players, I know there's questions on a few players, but every one of those, I look at that roster and I get excited in a way that makes sense about each player and the way they play and what they bring. Dallas Stars hockey to me has always been exciting, always been fun, relentless, in your face, pushing the limits on the outside of the fence. I mean, there's been some of those fun games, I'm going to say, that I've covered in the 7 years I've been covering the Canucks directly. Some of those fun games that I can think of are Dallas Stars games, win or loss for the Canucks. I've always appreciated the way the players in Dallas, the way they play, the way they, like I said, they sort of push that outer limit, try to turn the defense back in on itself is something I always feel like in getting inside. And the lineup is, I mean, when you see a player like Mikko Rantanen, like, of course that's a Dallas Stars player. Jason Robertson the same way. And so can Gully find that sort of special bit that was lacking at the end of the day at the dance under DeBoer, despite everything that he was able to do that was positive? That to me is the biggest question. But I'm a huge fan of this team. I think the roster is there. I agree with Thomas. This is certainly the best team in the Central, the deepest team in the Central, and quite possibly the deepest team in the whole conference, even more so than the Oilers.
Well, I will, for the sake of my colleagues, not bring up Thomas Muller, but it's been a good one so far. Patrick, thank you so much for joining us. Actually, I think 3 of us would love it. Luds would tune out in a heartbeat, but thank you. It's been wonderful. Love your insights, and can't wait to talk to you again about it later. But thank you for joining us today. It's
hey,
been
Patrick, and when we make our trip to Vancouver, I'll be reaching out for you as our tour
absolutely.
guide.
Absolutely. Yeah. Would love it.
Right.
Just bring your shin pads, please.
You better. I'll give you plenty of notice. You can rest up.
All right, there he goes. Patrick Johnston.
Take care, guys.
He is the sports columnist for the Province and the Vancouver Sun. And Luds, I want to give you the opportunity to tease our guest tomorrow on Friday's DLLS Stars show, if you would be so kind.
Well, we have a former Dallas Stars employee, former assistant manager, general manager, Doug Armstrong, currently the GM, and not to be soon, he's gonna pull a Bob Gainey. He's gonna move up one level higher. Up. Yeah. So Doug Armstrong will be here tomorrow at what did we say, 1:30 to 2?
I believe so. Yep. Because the 1 o'clock show tomorrow, I think the second half of the show, yep. Armstrong, Army as Luds calls him. For those that
and
are
we're
familiar.
not going to overtime either.
We'll try to keep it on time. Sean, we will mention Joe Pavelski tomorrow. Do you want 30 seconds or less on Pavs and the recent news?
I don't. On the draw over there.
I don't.
Yeah.
I don't.
Okay.
No, I'm good to go.
No, you know what? He's probably got school pickup.
I'm ready to roll.
Sean, thank you so much. Big thank you to Thomas Drance and, of course, Patrick Johnston for joining us today, and for Tanner, our producer. He was on the money except for the Pavelski bell. We'll be back tomorrow at 1 o'clock for our Friday edition with Doug Armstrong of the DLLS Stars podcast. Thanks for joining us.
We all silly like the mayor.